So the easiest spot to start here, guys, if we're looking at Baby Yoda, is the shape of his head, right? So we know Baby Yoda's head is, a little bit egg-shaped, a little bit circular shape. So if I start sort of in the middle of my page, and I just lightly, and I'm not drawing hard, and you'll notice I'm almost scribbling. They're not solid lines or straight lines yet, right? And I'm just going to get sort of that squished sort of ball shape that I want to get. And once I'm happy with that shape, I can sort of make it harder. I can sort of solidify my lines. Okay. What you'll notice, okay, is I'm not using solid lines yet, and it still looks a little scribbly. And that's because when I'm sketching, right, this is what I want. I don't want hard lines, because if I use hard lines, they get really, really hard to erase. Okay. So once you've got sort of the head shape that you're looking at, right, and I'd like mine maybe a little bit more round here, so I can extend my roundness. Right, I can sort of pick where I want my ears to go, and depending on the mood you want your Baby Yoda to sit in, right, you can have his ears sort of up like he's listening, down like he's scared, or out sort of just like he's just a little bit paying attention. So I'm going to sort of come off the top, and his ears are almost a little bit triangular, so I'm just sort of coming off my shape at a natural angle, going down to a spot where I like it rounded. And again, I'm still sort of scribbling as I do this until I get the shape and lines that I want. Right, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do my other side as well. And we'll play with some perspective here. So maybe this ear is a little bit further back. Maybe I'll come to a point on this side just to show a little bit of a different shape. So right now I've got the basic shapes of my head and my two ears, right? And I'm not going to start adding detail yet, okay? Because I want to keep going and making sure all my the rest of it sort of comes out to use, right? Great question. Which pencil is the basic pencil? Your HB is a basic pencil. The kit you got does not include an HB, so if you're using an H or an F, you're pretty close. Or any pencil that you have at home, which is your school pencil, is either an HB or an HB2, which is your basic sort of light one. Okay. From here, once I've got the head, I'm going to decide I want to look at a little bit of the body shape to make sure I get all the proportions right? And if you don't know what proportion is our size ratio to make sure that our head shape matches our body shape in what we're looking at. So really quickly, I'm just sort of going to go, okay, I know Baby Yoda wears the sort of coat or robe the whole time, which is very, very pretty much almost square on him. So I can sort of just add this sort of square shape to what I'm doing, right? But I know the bottom. I know the bottom of the robe is never square, right? It's never flat. Right, so instead of doing a straight line across the bottom, I can do sort of a squiggly line or a crooked line to show some movement in his robe. And again, I'm still sort of scribbling and lightly drawing it, and it's a little bit messy. So yeah, if you drew yours a little bit too big, it's no problem. That's why we're drawing lightly. You can erase and you backtrack a little bit. And then keep going. But that's the other advantage of these light lines is you can change your lines a little bit, and then they come into play a little bit more. Okay. So now what we have is what looks like a little bit of like a sack of potatoes with sort of two triangles off the top. So we know Baby Yoda has some arms, and so again I can just draw some of the rough shape in, knowing where they come. And Baby Yoda is a little bit. His arms are longer than his body. Which eraser to use? That's a fantastic question. Your white eraser is fine for now. Your knead eraser comes in handy because you can actually shape it. Your knead eraser is almost like, it looks like Play-Doh. You can actually squish it down, break it up, and make it into a ball and change the shape and size depending on the area you're trying to erase. So if you're erasing in a really small area, you could change the shape and size of your eraser to get into that area. Okay. So your white eraser is always best. I prefer white eraser over pink eraser. So if all you have pinks at home, that's fine. What you want to make sure on a white eraser, though, if you notice, the tip of my white eraser here has got some dirt on it. If I go to use that corner on the paper, it's going to transfer that dirt or chalk or graphite onto my paper. So you want to either on a separate piece of paper, make sure you can erase and try to erase to make sure it's all gone. If you're on a tabletop or desk surface, if you just actually erase it on the desk surface, it sort of cleans off the eraser as you go. Okay. So now we've got our basic shape and outline, and if you're happy with it, we can start adding details. Okay. Anybody not happy with their shape yet? Anybody behind on a step? Perfect. A couple people sitting saying they're happy, and that's fantastic. All right. So what we're going to look at next is we're going to start adding some of the details. Okay. I like to start with the body, only because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to the face. So if the face doesn't turn out right from the start, I might walk away from a sketch and not finish it. So I like adding the body elements first and then moving to the face. So for me, Baby Yoda, his collar sort of sticks up and comes up, so I can sort of I'm going to come up and bring sort of this rounded collar out. And I'm sort of drawing over my other lines right now, and that's okay, because they are lighter lines, right? I know the collar comes out of the top, wearing a big wide collar. On his coat, and I know it sort of folds over in the middle. In what we're looking at, and that fold sort of follows suit on the rest of his jacket opening or robe opening, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to continue the same sort of line down because it follows the same line. And then if I'm happy with it, I can actually go in and erase any of the lines that I don't need anymore that are inside what's going to become the collar. So parts of the bag or parts of the cloak and the arms and shoulders that I don't need to see through the collar anymore. I can erase those lines because now they are no longer visible to what I'm working with. Okay. I can add some other details, so I know there's some more stitching sort of on the collar so that, there's some detail on it. And it depends how much detail you want to add and how much you want to show. So I know there's a little trim on his collar piece. I can add that little trim piece in. Okay. I know there's a gap between his head and his collar, so I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap here at the top. And the fact that it's starting to be shaded in and look like a little bit scribbled in here, that's okay, because we're going to add shadow in after that. Same thing, I can sort of break the arm apart. So right now it looks like the arm is a separate piece from the body because our solid line here. So I'm going to erase a little bit of that line to make the arm and the body look a little bit like they're together, as I erase a little bit of my collar. And I'm going to do these little Y's here. Yeah, put this little bit of a Y here to show that there's movement in the clothing, show that there's a gap, and that there's two pieces, and that the clothing wrinkles, right? If you look at your shirt under your arm, right, the fabric wrinkles in your arm. So we want to capture that as we go. Okay. And then we know there's a cuff on Baby Yoda's sleeve again. So I'm going to come out just a little bit further from my original hand and add a little bit of a cuff onto his sleeve. And then we don't usually see his hands when he's walking. He might just have, we might just see his knuckles peeking out from below it. And I can erase anything else that I don't need, any other arms pieces. Okay. So essentially, and I go, okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I like the look of that. I've got the cuff, I've got the hand, I've got the arm. My arm's a little bit stiff, so if you don't like the stiff arm, what you can do is, again, you can sort of take that straight line and start to make it, add some curved lines into it to make it look like the fabric is curving, right? Or the fabric is wrinkling or bowing. So that way it looks a little bit less cartoonish, more realistic. And again, I'm still drawing super lightly because at any point I might need to erase or change something or change my design in where I'm going. And because I've done the left arm now, it's only logical that I jump over and do the right arm to try to make sure I keep some symmetry in my drawing. So again, I'm going to decide I want to add the cuff on. I'm going to make a little bit bigger of a cuff this time. And then I want to add sort of the knuckle sort of sticking out there again. In this case, it's sort of just a half moon. If you want to add little detail lines on there to show that, you know, the bones in the hand, go for it. And again, I'm going to sort of, instead of that nice straight line that was my sleeve before, I'm going to add some curvature to it, just so it's not such a hard, solid line. Then I can step back and look at it and I go, okay, you know what? I enjoy that. You know, again, I want to make sure the arm doesn't look like it's a separate piece of the body, like an action figure. So I'm going to erase part of that, the cloak in the middle. I'm going to add that sort of V shape in there again to make it look like the fabric is folding. Okay. And then it comes down to adding some of the other details. So again, the same sort of stitching that I have on the collar up here and on the sleeves, I'm going to add, I want to add to the bottom. So it doesn't look like he's just wearing a bag. It becomes more of a robe. And if your bottom line's not nice and clean like mine, you can, you know, make it a little bit harder. Line it up a little bit. Okay. And, you know, he's still looking a little boxy. So instead of this box shape, you know, I'm going to take the robe and I'm actually going to pleat it out a little bit. Add some lines to it. Add some shapes. And instead of this boxiness over here, I might actually extend my robe out a little bit. Just so he doesn't look so boxy in what we're doing. If you look closely at any of the Baby Yodas, they have a pocket. I don't, not that they would use the pocket very much, so I'm going to add the pocket square. And to me, this is just going to be some little lines to signify that it's there, that you can sort of see it in the jacket, but you can't actually see it. And again, keeping my symmetry, I'm going to go both sides. Okay. So now I'm happy with that. Got my shape. He's not looking so boxy anymore. And we got the curvature of the cloak. I followed the same curvature on both sides. Right. I sort of get happy with my cloak. And I'm going to sort of leave it there. I'm not going to add more details yet because I want to make sure I keep going with the rest of the details first. And then I add all the final details at the end. So any of the extra value or shading or colors, I'm going to add at the end. So I'm going to go up and start with an ear. Everybody still following along, or are we going too fast? Thumbs up or type in the chat box. Rock on. And if I'm going fast, trust me, I get it. A sketch, something like some of my other detailed work, you know, something like that. Might take me 8 or 10 hours, depending on how much time I want to put into one, right? So if I'm going fast, don't be afraid to tell me to slow down or ask for steps. And don't be afraid to come back and adjust as we go, right? Drawing is always fluid until we sort of solidify or until you add some colors, right? So I'm going to want to add the ear. And Baby Yoda's ears are very much like that of a dog or any other animal. And that we have the outside of the ear and then we have the inner ear. So, I'm going to draw my inner ear, and I'm basically just following the lines of the outer ear shape that I created earlier. And I'm going to create sort of this interesting sort of triangular almost shape inside. That's off the head. Okay. But then I also want the eardrum that's sort of inside, and so sort of can draw the angle, and then a second sort of line inside. And what this does is it takes our two-dimensional shape from our ear and sort of gives us some 3D elements inside the ear that shows there's some depth there. But we're going to add some more of that later when we add the value in detail. But I also know that my ear is not separate from my head. So I'm going to erase just a little bit of the head shape that I had here to show that it is continual, right? Because it's off his body. So it continues as we go. I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side. Following on my similar shape to what I created before. Detail is very important, right? Depending on the type of sketch you're doing. If we're doing cartoons, and I got an email from somebody asking to learn how to draw the characters from Among Us, and I'm more than happy to show you guys how to do that. Those guys are fairly simple compared to Baby Yoda, and far fewer details are needed for that, right? Again, I'm going to have sort of my inner eardrum, and just a little bit of again, shaping and lining to add some elements in there, okay? One thing here, my ear is sort of coming into my collar, so I can change the shape of my ear and sort of can round it to sort of come into Baby Yoda's head. That way it doesn't look like it's being cut off by the collar, which is okay. Okay. And again, I'm going to end up erasing just a little bit of the upper head shape that I had so that it looks like it connects with the ear and not just one. Okay. Nice, Ashley. So maybe you can help us out when we do some Among Us characters later on. Okay. Next are the eyes. And the eyes can be everybody's nemesis because getting them the same and equal are challenging. Okay. Typically what we want to do, if you've ever learned facial proportion, okay, if you draw sort of a grid across your Baby Yoda, and I'm just using light dots because I'm going to erase them after, right? We find out sort of where the center is and where the halfway point is. And our eyes, we want to start just a little bit on either side of that. So, and I can even divide it further. If I divide the bottom half in half again, okay, I get basically this space in here is going to become the nose. Space down below is going to be the mouth. The eyes are going to sit sort of on this eye line, and then everything else will be forehead. And if you're drawing humans, it's the same idea, but the forehead looks really big, but you'd add hair to it. Well, Baby Yoda doesn't have a whole lot of hair. So if I'm following those lines in that sort of center, I'm going to give some eyes out. And Baby Yoda has some nice big, sort of more roundish eyes. You don't need to sort of worry about the shape or the proportion here. Like Baby Yoda's eyes are bigger than his head, or bigger than the rest of the elements on his face, right? So again, if I look, a little bit off. So again, I'm going to try to keep the same size eye on the other side. And this takes practice. If you have to erase one eye 2 or 3 times to get to the same size, don't worry about it, right? I can tell you right now, my left eye is bigger than my right eye. except I like the size of my right eye probably a little bit more, so I might try to make my left eye just a little bit smaller. But eyes, again, are all about playing around with the shape and size. So play around with it until you get comfortable with the eyes. And mine looks a little bit crooked here, and that's because my original head shape was not square, right? Or it wasn't perfectly flat or straight on my page. It was angled, so it looks like Baby Yoda's tilting his head a little bit and questioning stuff as we go. So once I'm happy with my eye shapes, and I think real quick, both those eyes are pretty good. I like them. I'm going to look at the nose. And again, noses can be people's nemesis because creating realistic noses can be a very big challenge. It's a skill that I haven't fully mastered yet. You'll notice in a lot of my drawings, most characters are wearing helmets or masks, or other elements, just because I don't like drawing faces because I'm not super great at drawing faces. But it's all practice, right? It's all relative. There are times I have done faces. Trying to find one for you. I have a couple drawings here, and I can't seem to think of the one I want. So when we look at the nose, easiest way to start is with the bridge of the nose. And when you think of the bridge of your nose, it's sort of two straight lines that come down between the eyes. So if I sort of start with these small little sort of half crescent shapes, right? It's almost like almost a C and a backward C. Okay. I sort of just I make sure I have the bridge of the nose. Okay. And then Baby Yoda's nose is quite flat, right? We get sort of the roundedness of his face. So I sort of can add, again, this crescent shape in showing it, right? I can add a little bit of nostril on either side, right? And then again, some roundness of the face again to show the roundness, right? And his eyes are in sort of these sockets, so I can add some of the roundness, and I can keep adding on as I add the roundness to his face, right? Baby Yoda's mouth is either open or closed. So in that sense, this becomes real easy. It just becomes sort of a line that you can, make crooked if he's curious. You can make this traditional cartoon upside down sad face if he's concerned. Right, so maybe I'll just add that little more of a concerned look on our Baby Yoda as we go. And then there's all the details on the skin, right? So they've got all these lines, the alien species, which we still know very little about if you follow Star Wars, right? That form up the shape of their skin. Right? So once I'm happy with my, my basic outline, right? And I like my shape. Actually, I want to add a pupil highlight and to make it look like there's a little bit of reflectiveness in it. And my Baby Yoda is going to be looking upwards a little bit. Okay. I can go around. I can erase any of the details I no longer want or need. So I'm going to erase some of those face guidelines that I put in that I divided my face with. Clean up any other edges that I don't like. So if you got any scribbles that sort of went long or far. Okay. And be careful with swiping with your hand, like I'm doing here, because the oils on your skin will smudge the pencil or the graphite from the pencil. So once you're happy with the outlining and shape, this is where those sketching pencils come into play. Okay. So if we want to start adding some detail, right, we're going to want to start looking at the values of our sketching pencils. Yes, Charlie, by all means, I can slow down. Okay. Well, it's okay if it's looking depressed. Baby Yoda is a little depressed most of the time anyway. He always seems to be disappointed unless he's eating or is told not to eat, which makes him disappointed again. So what I'm going to do next is, if you're waiting, I've taken out 2 of my sketching pencils, and I have my 4H and 6B out, so a lighter one and a darker one right now. Is what I'm going to use next. Okay. I'm actually also going to use my 3B. So I've got a 6B, a 3B, 6B, and a 4H out right now. And what comes next is adding the details and value to make it look a little bit less two-dimensional, a little bit less cartoon-like, and taking your sketches to the next level, or drawings to the next level. Okay. Yeah, more 3D, exactly. Yeah, it's going to make it more three-dimensional. That's it, exactly. So what I like to start with my darker shades first and get my dark shades out of the way. So I'm going to start with my 6H, and I know that around the neck, into the robe, right? There's a little bit of shadow from the head to the robe, so I'm just sort of going to fill in just a little bit of space here. And if the rest of your drawing was done lightly, and I'm not pushing at all with this 6B, it's just very, very light, you can quickly see how much darker the 6B is compared to whatever other shape you or color you started with. We're using B's, not H's, right now for the dark. Whatever B you've got, you should have a 3B, 4B. Yeah, no worries. H's are the light, the B's are the darks. Think bold, like on your computer, right? Okay. So with not only the neck there, I'm going to add maybe just a little bit. I'm going to follow my lines a little bit on the sides where maybe where the robe is overlapping on itself. Okay, to show some folding or crinkling of the fabric. I'm just adding some detail. It's almost like a zipper during that fold that overlaps on the front of them. So I'm going to follow my original line there too. Okay, and add it in. Okay. Sorry about the noise. The floor cleaner is going by outside. You don't have to shade it all if you don't want to shade. Not at all. If you're somebody who likes to add color, you can do this same techniques when you add your color later. So if you're going to color in the robe beige, you could use multiple colors of beige to do that, and multiple colors of green when you do his skin or anything else. If you don't want to shade, you don't have to. The only thing I'd recommend you do is with your the other thing you do with your 6B is maybe the eyes. So his eyes aren't sort of a solid shade. So I'm going to sort of put some of my 6B in on the bottom, I'm not coloring in my highlight. I'm going to leave that white. And then I'm going to jump to my 3B, just to have some more darkness up top, but not quite as dark as the 6B, just to show some of that highlight. In the eyes. For the H's, I like to use the H for adding, actually, the 3B. You can also add some of the cast shadow from his from his vest onto his face. So Brianna, yeah, come see me tomorrow in room 311 if you're in the building, and I will get you everything else. Okay. And then I'm just creating some cast shadow. And again, knowing that his face is round, I'm keeping sort of these lines like as if I was drawing sort of part of a ball onto his face. And again, I'm using the dark pencils again. So Brianna, if you're just using an HB, that's okay. Just push a little bit harder when you add some of these shadows. That's all. That's the only difference you want to do there. Right. I can add some little bit of detail around the eyes. Light lines. Just to show some of the depth around the eye. Right. And then if you want to add the hairs, because right, we know Baby Yoda, if you look closely at his face, he's hairy. Right, we know that. I can take my lighter pencil, so your 4H, or you can use a 3H, 2H, you can use a 5H, whatever you'd like. And I'd almost recommend you layer multiple ones in. Literally, the easiest part here is I'm just sort of going to start adding little hairs. And I'm not counting them. I'm not worried about if they're straight or crossing. I'm not going super high off my page. Just go around to the end of his ear. And through the other ear, from the end of the ear up to the head. Right, so not lots of hairs. They're like peach fuzz hairs. Up. Okay. And then I'll continue over the top of his head. And these are just quick lines. I'm not thinking about these lines a lot. I'm just sort of putting them in. And then we also know the top of his head has these same little hairs. So I can just sort of start adding them at random. And I'm literally just sort of adding dashes and lines to the top of the head here to add these hairs in as I go. And you can layer in as many as you'd like. If you want to try layering in some different shades, you can pick up a darker pencil, add some darker ones, or even a lighter pencil, add some lighter ones. And the same thing, we know he has the hairs in his ears. I'm going to add the hairs into the ears. As we go. And then continue to add details. The other thing you can do with the light shaded pencil, okay, is if you've got any lines that you want to that are a little bit too light from your original sketch, you can go back over them, make them a little bit darker and harder. Now that you're happy with those lines anyway. The other thing we can do is we can add the details to the vest or the jacket, right? So we know fabric, if you look at your shirt that you're wearing, never does sit flat. So actually what we said with the hairs, we just sort of added little lines, really, really small lines at the top. Get a little bit closer for you. Right, so we just added sort of these lines in, and we weren't thinking about them. I was just sort of adding them because, again, it's not just one hair we're adding. We're looking to try to make it appear like there's hundreds of little hairs as we went around the face and element. So to add the detail to the robe, if you look at the shirt you're wearing, there's wrinkles and pleats and folds in your clothes, right? So we want to capture that on the robe as well, because the robe doesn't just sit flat. It's not a piece of cardboard, right? And it's not, and you want it to look like something and not just the paper. So you can add little swirls and lines and pleats and curls, and these can be unique, right? They don't have to be the same as mine because everybody's clothing folds and sits sort of differently. And honestly, this is just practice makes perfect to figuring out, how many pleats and folds are too many, and how many you need and don't need to stop, right? And little swooshes, almost looks like a Nike swoosh, sort of backwards, also helps in making it look like little folds or C's, or small little C's, or little Z's, as if you're writing the letter Z, but really, really quick. These all add to the element of texture on the clothing in what we're working in. And then again, if you're playing around with different pencil shapes and colors, or not colors, densities, so how light or dark they are, you end up getting different types of texture in your artwork. Right. So if I go back to my HB, I can make some of these creases or folds even darker, because it adds elements of value, right? And that's our fancy art term for shading into our drawing. And then it's all about deciding when you're going to be done. So I've gone back in with a darker pencil to add a few more layers of hair. Right? Now I'm trying to not cover the robe if you're trying to look at what I did with the robe. Just to give us some depth and detail. I'll go back over the nose a little bit if I want. Digital art. So if you have something you want to look at, by all means, I'm open to it. I'm not super fluent in digital art, depending on what you're trying to do. I can try to help show you some different pieces of it if you want. But digital art gets challenging because we don't all necessarily have the same technology at home. Some of us are on Chromebooks, some of us might be on iPads and other pieces. But there are some things we can look at, some basic tools and cheats. Okay, but I'm not an expert at Photoshop. I wish I was better at Photoshop than I am. But there are artists out there that basically do all their work. They draw and sketch digitally and add everything into sort of Photoshop or Adobe Elements and things, and then add color to their drawings online and digitally and like that. Right, and then once you're happy with it, really the only thing that's left is adding your signature, if that's how you're going to leave it. Right, November 18th. Right, and even if it's not something you're planning to display, I like to put my signature on stuff, or at least date everything I'm working on, because I like to see my growth as an artist. Right, I want to see what something looked like a year ago versus what something looks like today. Right, and I like to see how I can evolve in my drawing and in my sketching. And just like any of your courses at school, it all depended on how much you practice and how much you do and work on, right? Today's the 18th. If you're trying to add a date, Adrian.